this tutorial, I'll show you how to make this fully lined zipper bag. It has tabs on the ends of the zippers for a clean, professional finish, and a boxed bottom for a slightly more structured shape. You can pause the video here to take a screenshot or make a note of the things you'll need. I'm cutting 4 rectangles of fabric at 10 inches wide by 6.5 inches high, 2 from my outer fabric and 2 from my lining. I'll also cut 2 2-inch squares for my zipper end tabs, and I'm using an invisible zip that can be trimmed down to 9 inches. For all my pieces I'm using cotton poplin and I won't be interfacing in this tutorial, but if you want a more rigid, structured bag, then you can add interfacing foam or fleece to the back of your outer fabric pieces. I'm using this lemon fabric for my outer, yellow for my lining and the lemons again for my end tabs. The zipper I'm using is an invisible zipper, meaning the teeth are visible from the back and the top looks smooth. I need to trim my zip down to 9 inches, so I'm moving the zipper pull into the middle of the zip and trimming both ends. To get a nicer finish on the bag, I'm adding tabs to both ends of the zipper. Obviously I don't want these raw edges, so I'm going to fold them inside like this. I'm folding the square in half, and then I'll take the top and bottom of the square and fold them to meet that centre line. Finally, I'll fold it in half again, enclosing the raw edges. And the tabs are ready to be placed on both ends of the zipper. To attach my end tabs, I'm going to sew 2 parallel lines straight across the end, roughly 1/8 of an inch from this inside edge. You can see that I'm sewing straight across the teeth of the zipper because I'm using a soft nylon zip. If you're using a zipper with metal teeth, you'll need to take care not to hit the teeth, or you're likely to bend or break your needle. If you're not sure, try using the hand wheel for the first few stitches before sewing across the teeth. You can see that I'm backstitching out of habit at the start and end of each row. You don't actually have to do that because we'll be snipping these ends off in the next step. And I'm going to repeat those steps for the second zipper end tab. This end's a little more fiddly because the zip is separated, so you might want to pin or even tape it together first. If you find it difficult to sew a straight line over the teeth of the zipper, you might find it's easier to slow right down or even use the hand wheel as you pass over the teeth just to help you get some nice straight lines. Now I'm going to trim the edges of the end tabs down so that they're lined up with the edges of the zipper tape. Now that the zipper is neatly finished, it can be treated as one piece for each step going forward. Let's get the bag assembled. Place one of your outer pieces right side up on the table. Now align the zipper along the top edge with the right side facing down. Notice you have a slight gap at each end of the zip. Place one of your lining pieces with the right side facing down, aligning the top edges. And you're going to sew right next to the zip, attaching the lining, the zipper tape and the outer. I'm using a zipper foot to allow me to sew as close as possible to the teeth of the zipper. You can just use a regular presser foot for this, but you'll find that you have more of the zipper tape showing on your finished bag. I'm going to start a little way in from the end of the zipper. That's to help me make sure my needle is lined up properly next to the teeth of the zip. Then I can backstitch beyond the start of the zipper before sewing down the length of the top of the bag. As I get near to the zip pull, I'm going to need to move it out of the way in order to keep a straight line of stitching close to the teeth. I'm going to backstitch a couple of stitches, then raise my needle and presser foot and open my zip. Then I'll be able to drop the foot and needle again, backstitch to secure my stitches, and sew right the way down to the end. So you can see the seam that I've just sewn, and when I open that up, you'll be able to see that the zipper is enclosed between the outer and the lining so that none of the raw edges will be shown in the finished bag. Then I'll repeat those steps for the other side of my zipper tape. I'll place the other outer piece on the table right side facing up and align the edge of the zipper tape along the top edge. Notice that the 2 outer pieces are facing one another. Then I'll align the second lining piece on top with the right sides of the lining facing one another. I'm going to sew straight along the top, above the zipper teeth as before, through the lining, zipper tape and outer. Once again, I'm starting a little way in before backstitching to the start, allowing me to line up my stitches next to the teeth. And I'll sew halfway along, then I'll backstitch to secure my stitches, lift the needle and presser foot so that I can open the zip, allowing me to stay close to the teeth without the zip pull getting in the way as I sew along to the end. As I open this up now, you can see that the zip is neatly enclosed between my outer and lining with no raw edges on show. I recommend pressing all the fabric pieces away from the zip at this point. Before moving on to the next step, be sure to open the zipper. This is because you'll need to reach right through it when we turn the bag out later on. Now I'm going to place my two outer pieces right side together and my two lining pieces right side together. The zip will be hidden in the middle. Next, we need to sew all the way around the bag, starting on the lining, going all the way around the outer, and then leaving a 3 or 4 inch gap in the seam of the lining that we can pull the bag through after it's assembled. I'm sewing the lining with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to backstitch a couple of times to make sure my stitches are secure. As I come to the corner, I'll lift the presser foot and leave the needle down, allowing me to pivot around that 90-degree angle. As we come to the join between the outer and the lining, the fabric won't lie flat due to the zipper. That's why we left a 1/2 inch gap at each end of the zipper tape to reduce the bulk, and you should be able to sew straight across that seam. Notice as I sew the outer pieces together, I've reduced the seam allowance to a 1/4 inch. That's to make the lining ever so slightly smaller than the outer so that it sits comfortably inside the bag. And as I come back round to the lining, I'll ease back out to a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Remember to leave a few inches open in the lining so that you can turn the bag out later. My opening is actually a little bit small. You might want to leave a slightly bigger gap than this. Next, we need to get ready to box the corners. I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch square from the line of stitching on all 4 corners. And I'm just going to mark that with a piece of chalk. I've tried to leave each step in the video without cutting it so that it's easier to follow, but if you find yourself wanting to skip to the next step, I've pinned time markers in the comments to help you skip to the step that you want. And using a pair of scissors, I'm just snipping that 1/2 inch square off all 4 corners. In order to get that 3D box shape, I'm going to open this square out from the cut corners and match the seams together. I'm gently pulling the corners away from each other, and those seams will just kiss in the centre, leaving me with a flat edge running 90 degrees across the existing line of stitching. And this is the flat edge that I'm going to sew along. I'm going to nest my seams here, so I'm pushing one seam allowance one way and the other way, just to reduce any bulk in this corner. Then I'm just going to sew with a straight line, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at both ends. And you see how we get that nice, neat box shape. So I'm going to repeat that on the other 3 corners. While I nest the seam allowances on this corner, I'm going to try to make sure that the bottom seam of my bag is facing the same way on both corners. That just makes my finished bag a little bit neater. Honestly, if you're having trouble figuring out which way to point your seam allowances, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's one of those things that makes the finished item a little neater, but that most people really won't bother about. And then I'm repeating this step for both corners of the lining. Notice how I'm nesting the seam by pushing one seam allowance one way and the other way. If you're finding this video useful, please do subscribe using the red button below. This will make my new videos more likely to show up in your YouTube feed so that you don't miss them. Clicking the thumbs up icon will let me know that you liked the video, and it'll save it into your liked videos playlist so that you can easily find it again in the future. Now I'm going to use pinking shears to trim down those seam allowances and reduce the bulk in the corners. You can use regular scissors if you prefer. Pinking shears just reduce the chances of your fabric fraying later down the line. The next job is to pull the bag the right way out. Remember that hole that you left in the lining. We're going to reach inside, through the zip, and find the outer section of the bag. Just get hold of it and pull it all the way back through the turning hole. This can be a little fiddly, so take your time and don't force it ripping the seams of your lining. Before closing that turning hole, you'll want to gently push out all of the corners. I'm using a giant knitting needle, but you could use a point turner if you have one, or any blunt, pokey object such as the blunt end of a pencil or a pair of scissors will do. Just push the bag out into the final shape. Before tucking the lining into the bag, we need to close up the turning hole. The neatest way to do this is by hand using a ladder stitch or similar. However, since it's on the lining of the bag, which won't usually be visible, I tend to just top stitch the edge closed. I'm going to sew a straight line as close as possible to the edge of that seam. Obviously, it would be better to use a matching thread, but for this tutorial I've stuck with the navy so that you can see it clearly. Finally, trim away any loose threads and tuck the lining into the bag, pushing out the corners as you go. And your bag is complete. I'd love to see your finished projects, so please do share them in the Clinton Crafts sewing group on Facebook or tag clinton.crafts on Instagram. Thanks for watching.